Um, Today's strategy update is going to focus on a few things that we see as market disconnects, inefficiencies that we are making use of, that you can make use of as part of your investing journey, whether you invest with us or you're using another service provider. Um, so, three things to start off with. One is that we run a hedge fund, and that hedge fund is available to high net worth individuals, family offices, professional investors, and institutions. Secondly, we are outsourced chief investment officer for a few family offices, and we continue to expand that service as we talk to a number of family offices which require modernization with their portfolio, because most of them have invested into real estate or into certain specific assets, and they're looking at diversification, legacy preservation, etc. Thirdly, our services are available to businesses that are seeking capital or they are looking at a merger or an acquisition. So we offer fundraising advisory services. For all of this, the best way to approach us is through our community hub. So if you have subscribed to our newsletters, so you will see a link right at the top asking you to join our community hub. So go into that. You can see further details about our fund, about our OCIO services, as well as our fundraising advisory services. And you can request for services from there, or you can set up a call with us. We just want to discuss your specific requirements, etc. Right. Going into uh, today's session. So first of all, let's get a fair understanding of how ecoeconomics plays in this current sort of a market, right? So uh, mostly our thinking is that the economy is pretty much like an isolated system, and it doesn't have anything to do with the people, the natural resources, etc. That depend on it, right? So in effect, that fundamental understanding is wrong, and ecoeconomics clears this up essentially, right? So the economy is only a subset of what we call as human systems. So one of the human systems is the human food system, and we have the human economic system. We have the human transportation system, etc. These are human systems, and these human systems operate within the natural systems in this planet, and that is how these systems kind of interact and work together. A foundational concept here is entropy, disorder, essentially, right? We are in a constant state of disorder, and the systems try to, you know, uh, there is there is always the inevitable degradation of energy, materials that accompanies every economic activity. Economic activity results in an entropic gain, meaning there is more disorder where the inputs of materials always exceed the sort of beneficial outputs that we can get. But what we do is we measure outputs, we don't measure the inputs that go into this. So with ecoeconomics, what we did was this is not a system that I have invented. Let me clarify that very, very clearly. This is not something that I have invented, but I have identified based on my observation of more than 100 companies, right? 100 plus listed companies. There are a number of small businesses that I have observed. I have also talked to a um, number of firms that are in the making, startups, etc. So based on that understanding, we find that there is a certain mechanism for companies, irrespective of the sector that they operate in. There's a certain mechanism by which they can be both profitable and sustainable. So I'm not saying this based on my own thesis, but I'm saying this based on market observation. I know 100 companies do this. I might not know that another 1,000 other companies are already doing. Because I have researched 100 companies, I'm talking about my research. And my books are available for you to basically to purchase and read. There is Ecoeconomics, Navigating the Path to a Sustainable Future, which is the first book that talks about this framework, the decision model, how it works, how these companies make money and still be sustainable. While your ESG fund and your ESG masters are telling you you have to compromise profits in order to be sustainable. Unfortunately, that narrative is not true. And I can attest to it based on the thousands of interviews that I've had and many, many people that I talked to. So, um, our economic systems uh, in the last maybe 200 years so are kind of linked to sources of energy, which is fossil fuel. So, with more and more economic activity, whether that is a data center or it is a new manufacturing plant or it is uh, maybe a new bus on the road, every new economic activity comes with more and more usage of fossil fuel. But uh, I don't have anything against fossil fuel. I think fossil fuel will probably be existing even in 2100 or 2200. It will have a role to play going forward. But where I have a problem is the absolute dependence on it and countries fighting wars based on that and countries depending on fossil fuel for their energy security. I think that is where I have a problem. Because look at it, if you have to produce petrol or diesel, um, right? I still drive a diesel car, right? So so you might ask me, are you not eco-economic? Uh, I think I'm not at that stage where I can switch. Right? A lot of people are not, and I accept that fact. I'm not going to be idealistic here. Uh, so if I have to get diesel or petrol for that matter, you need to identify where oil is available. You need to drill that. You need to refine it. You need to transport it to a fuel station from which I can go and fill it up. All this is possible only when there is billions in investment being poured into this activity. So it is essentially a billionaire funded fuel which drives our economy today. But it doesn't need to be absolutely dependent on that. And that's the exact reason why I advocate renewables. So look at it. If you can slap a solar panel onto the roof or in your balcony, you can generate energy from the sun. And I know a number of UK households. Here in UK, we are always saying, it's gray skies for most part of the year, and you will not be able to get any solar power. I've heard that narrative a lot of times, but I'm seeing more and more people use solar power in their homes. And I'm using basically a 100% renewable electricity supplier, Octopus Energy, and they are bringing in solar power throughout the year. How do you do that? It is because even in this kind of weather, you are able to generate solar power for up to 300 days a year. Right? That's the reality that we learn from various experiments, various experiences in the market. And with that, it is also being supplemented by wind, also being supplemented by other, other renewables like wave energy, etc. That is also geothermal that is being used. So solar and wind are more, I can say, equitable. So I'm not dependent on a billionaire to supply this, right? So I can slap this solar panel onto the roof and I can generate power. I know many friends who are using solar, and with that, we have a system called as net metering. So I can use all of my energy needs and I can supply the rest to the grid when there is more amount of power that is being generated more than what I can use. And I will only be billed for times when I'm using, the grid power. So they are able to reduce their electricity bills significantly. Some of them 60%, some of them 80% of their electricity bill has gone that way. Another problem that we face in this kind of cold climate is heat. Right now, it is very, very hot. So we are thinking, okay, we might need air conditioning, etc. But in the UK, for almost 8 months, we need heating in the house. So for those 8 months, solar is useless because you're still going to use gas for you to heat. I have seen many houses shift to heat pump, air source heat pump, ground source heat pumps. We tried. They've used that. It is using electricity, and they are able to heat the house. The other approach that I've also seen is in the roof, basically in the loft, etc. They put these solar water heater that that stores really really hot water, 75 degrees, whatever, in a tank, and then that is being used to pump hot water into the radiators. I've seen that model as well in houses, in a number of commercial buildings. So you are able to use energy without depending on a billionaire to do this. Now, here is one big market contradiction that I want to talk about. One, in the US, we're trying to, you know, I would say, take out at the federal level, we're trying to take out incentives and deregulation of oil so that we can build more oil and fossil fuel related infrastructure, while states have not given up on that. So, federal versus state, that is basically a disconnect over there. So, there are a number of state level incentives that are still there for solar, for wind, for small modular reactors, nuclear reactors. We have geothermal, we have heat pump related incentives that are there. The EU is also trying to do a little bit of a dilution process in its Green Deal. So it did the Green Deal a few years ago, and then now we're talking of simplification. So you're trying to dilute what you what you meant to. So while I don't have any problem with diluting this if it leads to more market adoption and a more equitable energy situation. Why does it need to be equitable? I'm a hedge fund manager, right? Why do I need this to be equitable? I think the reason behind that is unless this is equitable, we wouldn't have a large enough middle class, and we would go back to the situation maybe 1,000 years back, or even 200, 300 years back, where we had a handful of billionaires, lords for that matter, who owned all the land, and we will have a large working class. I think many of the trends are taking us towards that situation. And it was only in the last, uh, post the World Wars, Second World War, that we have a thriving middle class. In America, maybe about 200 years that we've had maybe a thriving sort of a middle class. So that middle class is where a lot of the wealth transfer needs to happen, and that is where a lot of the technological advancements are coming in. And I think I would like to get to the point where that middle class continues to grow, and it is not going to become irrelevant anymore. So that is one of the major disconnects that I'm looking at, and essentially I'm focusing my energy in terms of identifying market inefficiencies and making use of that. So, so if you look at the U.S. markets, U.S. equities, take the S&P 500, it's been growing, right? We've we've uh, we are seeing S&P 500 going up in price when really the U.S. economy has had a decline. Q1 hard hard landing, and then now there's basically a slight growth in the economy. So in terms of GDP numbers versus stock market, there is a certain inefficiency that I want you to be aware of. The, uh, the second side that I want to look at is, um, you know, what we call as the, job market strength versus the consumer sentiment, right? Globally, consumer sentiment has improved while job markets haven't been that strong. The US job market, yes, it did show a certain improvement, but I have my own questions on the US job market because the US produces a lot of data, not necessarily good data, right? So if you were to ask me, what is the unemployment number today? I can't figure that out directly. I need to do a number of calculations and estimations before I can kind of come to that and say US has X amount of unemployment versus whatever is that percentage in the UK and various other geographies, etc. So with that large amount of data, uh, there is always a trouble that we are looking at data that's not really relevant, but we think it might be relevant, right? So I always say, if I look at India, we produce great statisticians, but not very good statistics, right? If you look at the US, they produce a lot of statistics, not necessarily useful ones. Right? There are a few useful ones, not necessarily everything being useful. Right? Uh, the, the other side to that is the UK has basically uh, a system of statistics delivery in which a layperson can drill holes into and find fault with it, etc. It is so transparent that you can basically drill holes into it. Like, jokes apart. Uh, so consumer sentiment improving while job market hasn't really strengthened. So we've seen about 500,000 jobs impacted by AI already. Another 1.5 million, 2 million jobs will get impacted by the rest of the year. So that is AI impact, not necessarily saying companies are implementing AI and kicking off people. Right? A lot of the kicking off people has happened in areas where they experimented with AI and it is not working for them. They're kicking off the people who worked on it. So you're seeing people with AI engineer, full stack engineer. You've got data scientists, analysts, etc., coming into the job market after a job loss. So why are they actually getting back into the job market? Because they've gone into a company which has taken them on board for an AI experiment, which hasn't really worked. And then they're out in the market. I think the biggest impact of AI that we'll ever see is in early stage white collar jobs, right? So graduate jobs, early career jobs. That's where the most amount of impact is likely to be. And that is not very evident at this stage. Yes, it is there in certain bits and pieces, but it's not very relevant. Now then, let's look at inflation. So on one side, we are seeing that the core inflation in the US is still sticky. We are finding that the PCE, personal consumption, expenditure, inflation, moderating right now. Um, So, what does this mean? Either the data is wrong, or it's lagging, or the fact that people are using up some of their uh, savings or emergency funds in order to handle current expenditure. And with that, we risk the economy going into another hard landing if that is the case. Right? I think that is one of the core considerations that we take into account as we stage our bets in the market. Right. So there are a number of global headwinds. So what we need really is pretty good risk navigator for us to kind of tackle the situation at this particular point of time. Right. So one side is the policy flip flop, whiplash, whatever you want to call it. So US, EU, And then the other side, if you look at China, they're rapidly advancing their green governance framework. So they're going green, 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 and they want to become pretty much the leaders in the green economy. So are we giving up more control to China and doing this flip flop? We will know very soon. The other side that we look at is we track many companies that are um, dropping ESG targets. They have greenwash litigation against them. So we have many of these companies and we take short positions on them and we make a lot of money. We want you to continue greenwashing and we want you to continue giving us those opportunities. Because just like us, there are many other hedge funds that are profiting from your greenwash, uh, and from the fact that you've made misleading claims and there are basically litigations against you. What we are seeing right now is a sort of dynamic legal front that is coming up, and the regulatory scope is kind of expanding as we speak. So the UK is fortunate enough to have a climate change law. It signed net zero into law back in 2019. But after that, they said, no, should we actually implement, given all that, there is a law. So for the courts to kind of rule on that, there is a baseline law with which it is able to rule. So it is the same situation in I think around 30 other countries. But with the US, we don't have that in place. So uh, with that, what happens is there are a number of rulings from the Supreme Court that are limiting various environmental reviews and deregulation, etc. So, in the absence of one framework legislation which uh, sets the stage, the benchmark, this is what has to be done. In the absence of that, we get into a situation where it is open to interpretation, and this gives us a number of opportunities in the market. So when we find that there is uh, a certain litigation and there is limitation on this federal environmental review, we can take shots on fossil fuel stocks. We can take, uh, long positions on renewable stocks. Very easy stuff to do. The other side is they're also finding what we call as ESG antitrust, right? We see a few situations where the collective action on climate, ESG, sustainability can be framed as antitrust in this kind of a situation where you have a dominant dialogue saying, yeah, climate change is a hoax, which is not really right. And I'm facing the heat of it as I speak. It's about 29 degrees today. Yesterday it was like 36 degrees. I've never seen that in London, at least in the last 10 years that we've been here. So are we seeing these as ESG antitrust? It is evolving right now. When that happens, long or short positions based on the stock that you are trying to kind of deal with. So underlying the stock is basically an unpriced biophysical risk, right? And which is something that we price and we take advantage of that. So our intrinsic value computation and the eco moss that we use, the eco margin of safety mechanism that we use, means that we are pricing in the long-term cost of resource depletion, environmental degradation, which most other analysts, hedge funds, uh, mutual funds, stock brokers, etc., do not take that into account as part of their research. So, if you have a portfolio that is heavily weighted in resource intensive sectors, you are carrying a hidden systemic risk, which will eventually materialize. So, is it going to materialize in the rest of the year? Probably not. Is it going to materialize next year? Maybe. Is it going to materialize by 2030? Very definitely, yes. So that's the sort of situation that we look at. So, uh, what are some of the actionable investing opportunities? Number one, eco leaders that we look at, and we also call them as natural capital stalwarts. So we take those, we take long positions. That's pretty much our core portfolio. We take clean energy and electrification. As I mentioned, clean energy is more equitable versus fossil fuel that is billionaire driven. So, and electrification is taking place, and whether you like it or not, your manufacturer is trying to go electric. Uh, we've got steel that is being electrified. So blast furnace is being replaced by electric arc furnaces. ArcelorMittal is a great example of that. So uh, many. I have a UK food business that is basically electrified its source of industrial heat. So we have this more and more, and this use of clean energy and electrification creates a certain opportunity, and we trade stocks of these. We also look at circular economy and resource efficiency. So resource intensive models are unsustainable. So it's pretty simple. It's the law of entropy, right? Whether you like it or not, it is leading to chaos. You might want to live in that chaos for a certain period of time. Chaos cannot become status quo. So, looking at companies that are looking at the future, investors who are looking at the future, we have a number of family offices that are looking into the future, into 2050 and further. So, for them, focusing on circularity, minimizing material throughput via recycling, sustainable materials, product life extension, reuse, etc., it gains a significant competitive advantage. These three areas, eco leaders, clean energy, electrification, circular economy, resource efficiency, are basically complemented by what we call as adaptive and resilient infrastructure. We are shifting from prevention into adaptation largely, right? So investment in resilience becomes critical in this sort of a scenario. Infrastructure that is designed to withstand extreme weather, improve the water security, use less amount of water. So it's simple. We make money on businesses that are using lesser amount of energy. And in most of the cases, that energy is coming from renewables. So thereby they're not paying a utility bill. So their cost base is low. As a result, profits are higher. Uh, they're using lesser amount of water because they are optimizing for that. They have mechanisms for local supply chains. So you impose a tariff, I don't care because I've got a local supply chain. Incidentally, that tariff pause is actually coming to a close. That 90-day pause is coming to a close. I don't know what will happen, but I can't see anyone running to Uncle Trump with a deal, right? So he will either extend the pause and claim victory, or he will have to give it up, right? So it's only one of those options that he's got. Thirdly, we are also seeing businesses that have pretty good community engagement. So community engagement, you might see businesses, UK business selling maybe a heavy engineering firm in the UK. I don't want to call names. What they do is they supply clean water in Africa. Is that community engagement? I would call it as charitable activity. I'm not selling in Africa. Africa is not my market. If I look at the business model of the firm, they generated nothing from Africa. So is that community engagement? No. In comparison, I've got a food business that is teaching UK school kids how to cook from scratch. I call that community engagement because when that kid gets an opportunity to buy something, they will buy the product from this company. Whereas the other one, supply clean water in Africa, fantastic, great work, but it's got nothing to do with ecoeconomics. It's charitable activity. Ecoeconomics disregards these kind of charitable activities, right? So uh, that's the model that we are going after. We are looking at family offices that want to preserve their legacy. Uh, we are interested in talking to individuals that are either investing for their own future or for their children or grandchildren. Most of the investors on our fund are looking at that as individuals. We also work with institutions, either in the capacity of a OCIO or direct investment into our fund. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, as always, just message me on the Substack, or you can always reach me on LinkedIn as well. The other option is when I post this video, go ahead and comment on it, and I can pick it up from there. Right. Thank you.